So, how do you know which plants you should be planting, and what are some of those plants that can work well in Alabama in the native landscape? So, the first thing I recommend is knowing your ecoregion, which differs throughout the state. Again, assessing your specific site for things like soil pH, whether you have a clay or sandy soil, how much shade do you have, identify what are some of the keystone plants or the specialist supporting plants you might like to have that would give you joy and that you would like to look up in your landscape. Think about how to match those plants through design to your site, and then of course install them, and then understand that natives often they're all capable of spreading through the landscape. So having first selected, is this plant aggressive? Is this plant going to stay still? So earlier I mentioned Passiflora incarnata, which has a incredibly intriguing flower, but is really a quite aggressive plant. If you have a small space or you're uncomfortable with the herbaceous vine moving rapidly through your landscape, you absolutely should not plant that plant. You should plant something that moves a little more slowly through the landscape. Many gardeners are familiar with USDA hardiness zones, which is a measure of the average minimum temperature in a region and can give you some information about what types of plants will tolerate your climate in terms of freeze damage in the winter. For native plants, I recommend paying attention rather than not to the USDA maps, but to the EPA ecoregions, which lets you know what kind of ecosystem you're in. In Alabama, we have two main ecoregions. On the level 2, what the map shown here is what's called the level 2 EPA ecoregions. In northeast Alabama into central Alabama, we have the Appalachian Forest ecoregion, and then most of the rest of the state is level 2 central USA Plains ecoregion. Zooming in even closer, level 3 ecoregion on the left there, we've got regions like the Highland Rim in North Alabama, the Cumberland Plateau, or the Ridge and Valley, which runs through Birmingham up to Gadsden. All of those have different soil characteristics. For instance, 68, the Cumberland Plateau region, tends to have acidic, sandy soils. You can grow native shrubs like blueberry, mountain laurel, azalea, whereas 67 on some of the ridgetops or 71 may have more acidic soil, more basic soils, where some of those acid-loving shrubs simply are not going to perform well. In addition to figuring out what ecoregion you're in, you'll also want to do a specific site assessment, looking at what is the soil type. Do you have a clay? Are you acid? Are you basic? How much shade is there? How much water is there? What are the existing plants if it's not already landscaped and ornamentals? What is already growing there? What stage of ecological succession is it in? Or is it more dominated by grasses, shrubs, trees? What urban stressors are present? Is there compacted soil? Are there roads and cars nearby? Obstacles that would restrict root growth? Power lines? And what is the social and cultural setting of the planting? And what are you hoping to achieve from it? To get your money's worth on a native landscape, if your goal is supporting biodiversity in your ecology, you'll want to think, what are those keystone trees and which of them match my landscape after my site assessment? So in the eastern U.S., oaks support more Lepidoptera, meaning butterflies, and moss than any other trees. Willow is up there, though not always appropriate for a home landscape. Our native prunus species such as black cherry, American plum, Chickasaw plum. We have two native species of crabapple in Alabama, maples, pines, hickories. All of these plants support more than 100 species of caterpillar in Alabama. And then you have some common ornamentals like crepe myrtle and ginkgo that really don't support much of anything at all in terms of their ecological benefit producing native insect life. Just because it's a keystone plant, though, of course, doesn't mean it's appropriate for your landscape. If you are on a septic system, I wouldn't plant a black willow near it because the roots might infiltrate. Willows can also drop lots of branches. You probably don't want that in your landscape. If you have 5 acres with an eroded stream on the back, then it's a great choice to stake willow into the stream bank. So context matters there. American plum, the prunus is a keystone plant here. American plum can absolutely work as a tree in a park, on a street, in a landscape. It will root sucker though, so you have to be prepared for that and know how you're gonna to handle the root suckers if that's not something you're interested in maintaining. Then you wouldn't plant American plum. Thinking about shrubs, many shrubs do support caterpillars as well. Blueberries is actually the top of the list here. We have a dozen native species of blueberries in Alabama, so that's a great choice for an edible native to plant in much of Alabama. A rabbit eye blueberry. A false indigo bush is another great underutilized native shrub. Shrubs, of course, can have these nice flowers as well that feed hummingbirds and other pollinators. Here's a look at a few of the native shrubs I mentioned that all prefer an acidic environment. So really you want your pH to be 5.5 or below. If you're in the black belt, you're probably well above that. You could be above that in the Tennessee Valley as well. So blueberry, mountain laurel in the middle, and then native azaleas there. This is the importance of matching the plants to your site. If you don't do this well, you plant these shrubs into a site where the pH is too high, you'll probably get iron chlorosis or other issues with micronutrients where the plant, because the pH is too high for its preferences, is not able to take up micronutrients as well as it should, and it'll suffer as a result. Some grasses can support larval stage of insects as well, but usually when we think about what is a keystone flower, we're thinking about the number of pollen specialists it supports. So again, in the landscape, think about what is native, what is beneficial in the ecosystem, what also looks good ornamentally, and will actually fit in my landscape. So goldenrod is a keystone flower. It supports a high number of pollen specialists. I wouldn't plant a field goldenrod in a small space though, especially if you don't want a tall plant or you don't want any movement in the landscape because it will move rapidly. There are some goldenrod, zigzag goldenrod, that will move a bit slower in the landscape. But again, you need to think through how fast is this plant going to move, and does that match my design preferences and the size of this landscape. Here's a look at some of the research from the Auburn Bee Lab on which native flowers support the ecosystem the most. So all of these up here are fairly good choices. Some of them, partridge pea, goldenrod, the coreopsis will move pretty rapidly, whereas purple coneflower is going to move, and the beard tongue will move much slower through the landscape. They're all good choices. The top ones they identified, though, are blanket flower, Gaillardia, which is more of a native probably to Mississippi, Louisiana, but it functions well in the ecosystem in Alabama. Butterfly milkweed and blue vervain, which is not often thought of as an ornamental species, but is important ecologically. There's butterfly milkweed, both in a setting where it's mulched with pine straw in a foundation planting and where it's being maintained in a field. There's blanket flower. Blanket flower will grow in almost straight sand. It's also shown there in a raised bed, more of a typical raised bed media, and it can grow in that setting as well.